What's up, guys? So I'm going to give you the exact in-house landing page system that we used, for example, for this brand to make $300,000 in the last 30 days. Okay, so I'm not here to waste your time. I'm going to go over everything from the very first idea up until the iteration and analysis process. So the very first thing that you're going to basically do is a survey, because obviously there's a bunch of variables that we only know from our own customers, and obviously every single brand has a little bit of a different USP, and you attract a little bit different people. Every single brand, depending on the pricing, depending on the positioning, depending on the market, depending on even the sub audience that each of your marketing assets, for example, optimize into. And so this is why we need to do, surveys. We need to call customers. We need to actually speak to our in-house unique customers instead of trying to outsource everything to research and to overwork our poor creative strategists, basically. No, we actually want to go ahead and have a complete, really in-depth understanding of what exactly our customers, find good about our stuff, what is missing, and how we can improve. Okay, so we're going to ask them basically questions like, okay, how long did it take for you to unbox it? How long did it take for you to start using it? Are you still using our product, right? What other competitors have you looked at? Okay, there's all these important questions that you need about your avatar, that you need essentially, and you figure out a lot of objections and a lot of things that they're actually afraid of, right? Or maybe they're still afraid of that, but you can still then use that information in the landing pages, okay? So you shouldn't lie, but obviously those are things that you figure out, and then you can basically talk about them when it comes to your landing pages. Second thing we're going to do after we have all the information, all the variables that we need, we're going to do an ad account audit. And this is to understand what exactly is going on in the landing page process already, how the funnel was converting right now, how it's been converting, how it's kind of changed overall the landing pages that we've launched in the past, how kind of everything has been going with the conversion rate, with the scale, how are people that come from ads from different awareness stages reacting to different landing pages. And so all these pieces of information we're going to figure out through doing a very in-depth ad account audit. Okay, so this is typically the media buyer's job, right? So what we're going to do here, we're going to figure out exactly what kind of landing pages have worked in the past, how long our current funnel is, and the most important question of all is, what is the weakest metric of our funnel right now? Because if we don't know what to work on, we're just going to launch something random, and we don't even understand what exactly we're going to do, and therefore we're definitely not going to have a better result than previously. Because if the only thing that you do track is the overall ROAS, right? Let's say it's the new customer ROAS, then obviously that's not very in-depth, and that does not tell you a very in-depth, big piece of information. So you can't really work with that, okay? So after we have the survey and we have made and done the ad account audit, now we move on to something which is called an ideation. So this is actually when we start kind of scripting, or at least a little bit trying to figure out and picturing how this is going to look like. And so two things are really important here: the funnel type and the funnel length. Funnel type, essentially, because we need to identify what is the weakest metric. For example, do we have a volume problem or do we have a quality problem? If we have a volume problem, it might actually make sense to make the funnel shorter, to have less friction, and to have a landing page which is more product focused, more aware, right? Obviously, if we have a quality problem, we need to warm up people more. So it might make sense to make a landing page which is focused more on the problem, or more on something which is called storytelling, right? And then more friction, so a longer funnel. And so these things we figure out by kind of taking into account these two little sections that we've already basically done previously. And so now that we have this, we move on to the very first two actual actionable steps that are going to get us closer to the goal here, which is obviously finding a super good landing page. So essentially, these are two things that you have to understand and have to do every single time that you do this, because the very first thing, because overall we want to isolate. Okay, we want to isolate every single step in the process. We don't just want to launch anything. We want to actually know what we launch and what the goal is behind every test that we launch. And so the very first thing that you're going to launch actually is going to be a headline test. Now, if you've been around on this channel, you know what a hook test is. A hook test is generally that you just launch image ads, one by one, ABOs, right? Only white background, like nothing on the image, literally just text. Okay, so it's just text in order to validate which ones have the highest click-through rates, meaning which ones are the best hooks. Now, what's cool about this is you should also do this for your headlines. And so how this is going to look like is you're basically going to isolate the entire process. You're going to make image ads with only text on them, and those texts are going to be only different landing page ideas for a headline ideas for your landing page. Okay, so you're going to launch them at $5 an image. page in a normal ABO, and then you're just going to make iterations, and you're just going to make variations in the sentence structure. So is it going to be a question that you ask? Is it going to be a statement? Is it statement, question, question, statement, double question? What type of sentence structure is it? And then how long, how short, right? Then we have the awareness stage. Are we trying to kind of speak to very unaware people? Are we making it super product focused? For example, this is why people are switching to this and this, right? Obviously there's two different things. And then how much information are we actually giving away already inside of the headline? Okay, so these are things that we kind of play around with. Now, the second thing which we're going to do before we start actually copywriting the landing page is we're going to gather all the assets that we have, okay? So including media, including the brand metaphors. This is what I like to call that. Essentially, brand metaphors is just like the language, right? Is it more easier language that just like basically your audience is it more easier, more, personal language that your audience resonates with more, or is it more actually very professional, very slow paced, very, very high level English, for example, language that you use? So this is kind of like the brand metaphors, and obviously a couple of just like metaphors, actual metaphors that your brand really uses, and very tied to the winning variables spreadsheet. So we're going to check out the winning variables spreadsheet that you've hopefully already made so far, and then you know exactly what's going on inside of each and every step of the funnel, and you can just throw together all the variables that you've already used and then use those to your advantage before you even start writing copy. Now, when we start writing copy, you can either do this completely yourself with the best AI prompts in the world, but obviously you're going to get into a certain point at scale where you're going to outsource this. Okay, so you're going to have a creative strategist and you're going to have a copywriter. Maybe it's the same guy, maybe it's a separate guy, but I'm just going to give you the project management pipelines that we essentially use in-house so that you can copy it and just basically do the same thing. So it doesn't matter what project management software you use. You can use Asana, for example. Essentially, how that would look like is you have a pipeline. Is basically just essentially you can drag and drop the project. So I'm gonna show you guys one example. Let's say this is a landing page. Okay, example. So obviously the creative strategist, let's say, puts this in here, and now the copywriter sees this, and now he drags this to work in progress. So he's gonna basically start to actually write this landing page. Now when he's done, he's gonna actually drag this into the next pipeline, which is internal review. So the internal review is actually the review with actually the copywriter and the creative strategist. So basically the person who put this into the ideation assignment pipeline, and then from there essentially is going to kind of look over it again. Then when that's done, I was going to drag it to the internal revision if needed. If not, obviously if there's no revisions, if it's all perfect first try, then you're just going to drag it into the external review, meaning someone who hasn't been doing anything on the ideation process. So not the creative strategist, could be you who's the founder, could also be, for example, the media buyer or anyone else, maybe another copywriter, just someone that hasn't been like looking at this very, very in depth and just like can look over this on an overall more, I would say objective level and has more of an objective view. And then obviously if that guy has any revisions, it's going to drag it in here. If not, then it's going to go live and the landing page is actually being launched inside of the ad account. And so there we are, right? We're actually going to finally launch. Usually you make a little bit of usually you start to make a little bit of variations when it comes to the customer knowledge. So how much do you expect them to know already, right? Coming to that landing page. So is it actually, are you starting to list out a bunch of different problems, solutions with, are you actually starting to list out a bunch of different solutions that they could have tried in the past, or kind of like expecting that they don't know anything, right? Kind of tied to the awareness stage. And so then you launch a B test. Okay, so you launch a B test, and then you give them a couple hundred visitors each, and then you just see, you basically have two options of how you can go out of this launch, right? The revenue per visitor is either better than the PDP funnel, right? So the normal, completely old the completely old and normal product page funnel, or it's actually worse. If it is worse, then we're just going to move on. We don't want to iterate anything that is not good enough, okay? There is absolutely no point in trying to iterate something, trying to make something work that isn't good already, because it's just going to be a headache and it's just going to be a hassle and it's not worth it, because you should only focus on iterating stuff, making things better that are already good inside of the ad account. And so if it doesn't work, if nothing works really, then you just take a step back, you analyze what the weakest metrics were, and then you work on those. However, we want to take that one landing page that worked, that because the revenue per visitor was better than the product page funnel. And so now we're actually going to figure out still, even though despite it working, what is the weakest metric? Because there's probably still always a weakest metric inside of the entire funnel. And so it is either conversion rate or AOV or LTV, so the subscription take rates. And so it can either be one of the three. If it's the conversion rate, then figure out, okay, how can I add in more information already up front so that the people that do actually come through actually convert higher? Meaning, how is this going to look like, right? So it could be, for example, putting the price in the landing page headline, right? Or it could be things like this. It could be making, the funnel longer, essentially, having more disqualifiers in the funnel. Obviously, if that's really, really good, then you want to remove them. Then you want to work on other things. Let's say you have an average order value problem, right? If your AOV is a problem, then you need to change the script up or actually change the media up, the assets that you have, in order to make and showcase the benefits of using multiple of the product, right? Maybe talk about relationship desires more, of actually kind of solving a problem together. And so, for example, the LTV is a big one because usually this does not only depend on your offer. Obviously, this depends a lot more also, like, for example, how long do you present the benefits to be? So it's like usually there's something called stretched benefits or future benefits, which is a very good direct response mechanism. A lot of people don't use it properly because what they do is like, okay, well, this is the craziest, newest mechanism, and hey, use this, blah, blah, blah. It's only been there for a month, right? But obviously people don't realize that people are scared of anything that's new, right? People don't like change. And so what they will do is obviously they'll try one maybe after a lot of convincing, but then, they're not going to subscribe to it because they have no clue what the studies even say. So what you should push a lot more on actually is, okay, my friend's actually been taking this for 3 years and he had this benefit and this benefit and this benefit and no side effects and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is kind of what you want to do. But this is pretty much what the iteration and analysis process looks like when it comes to launching specific landing pages. And so I want to say thank you so much for giving me your most important asset, which is your attention. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you a beautiful day.